When outer beauty mirrors inner wholeness, Jung's path to the self. You think the mirror shows your face, but it doesn't. It shows your soul, everything you've hidden, everything you've forgotten. Jung said your body is not a costume, it's your confession. When you learn to see it, really see it, your reflection becomes your teacher, because the way you look is not vanity, it's revelation. Part 1, the psychological mirror, how you look, reflects how you think. Carl Jung once said that the body is not separate from the soul, it is its expression. When you look at someone, you're not just seeing skin, bone and features, you're witnessing the visible form of their invisible psyche. Every wrinkle, every posture, every tone of the voice reveals something about the internal dialogue a person has with themselves. To Jung, your appearance is not vanity, it is a living mirror of your unconscious mind. Think about it: the way you dress, how you walk into a room, the way you hold your gaze when speaking, all of these things are psychological signatures. They express who you believe you are. The human body carries an ancient intelligence. It communicates without words. Jung believed that consciousness doesn't stop at the neck, it flows through the entire being. Your appearance is a projection of your inner story, your beliefs about worth, your degree of self-acceptance, and the unspoken pain you carry in your shadow. A slouched posture, for example, may not just be poor body mechanics. It can reveal resignation, self-doubt, or even guilt. The body bends when the psyche feels crushed. Similarly, someone with an upright, calm presence is not just confident, they are internally aligned. Jung would call this integration, when the inner and outer self work together rather than in opposition. We are addicted to many things in life: success, validation, comfort. But Jung might argue that one of the most powerful addictions we could ever cultivate is to our own reflection. Not in a narcissistic way, but in a psychological way. To become addicted to your appearance means to constantly engage with what your outer form is trying to teach you about your inner condition. Appearance as a symbol of inner order. For Jung, symbols are bridges between consciousness and the unconscious. Your appearance is one such symbol. It's a living metaphor that tells you who you have become and who you are afraid to be. When your outer image feels in harmony with your inner truth, you experience vitality. When they are out of sync, you feel drained, fragmented, or ashamed. Many people treat their appearance as decoration. They fix what they see without ever asking what it means. But Jung would say your outer self is not a costume, it's a dialogue. It reveals the ongoing conversation between your ego and your unconscious. Look at someone who radiates authenticity. Their beauty seems effortless, doesn't it? It's not about perfect symmetry or fashionable style. It's about coherence. Their outer form is aligned with the language of their soul. They have stopped pretending, and their body reflects that truth. Contrast that with someone who hides behind layers of appearance, heavy makeup, expensive clothes, exaggerated confidence. Their image doesn't express their essence, it conceals it. Jung would recognize this as the over-identification with the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society. The persona is not evil, it's necessary. But when it becomes our only identity, it traps us in a shallow reflection of who we truly are. The ego, the mirror and the shadow. The mirror doesn't lie. It shows the aspects of yourself you wish others wouldn't see, the tiredness, the fear, the hunger for approval. Jung taught that facing the shadow, the parts of yourself you repress or deny, is essential to individuation, the process of becoming whole. When you look at your reflection and feel discomfort, it's not because the mirror is cruel, it's because it's honest. To become addicted to your appearance in the Jungian sense means to face that honesty again and again. It means not turning away when the reflection feels uncomfortable, but using it as a gateway to self-knowledge. Every time you look at your reflection, you have the chance to meet your unconscious self, your unmet needs, your forgotten desires, your unlived life. Most people avoid mirrors for that very reason. The mirror becomes a silent therapist, and many can't handle the session. They see wrinkles and interpret them as decay rather than wisdom. They see imperfections and call them flaws rather than history. But Jung would argue that to truly see yourself physically, is to begin to see yourself psychically. There's a reason that transformation often begins with the body. When you change the way you look, not superficially but intentionally, you shift your relationship to your identity. A person who begins exercising, grooming, or dressing better often reports a change in confidence. But Jung would interpret that differently. The psyche is using the physical change as a ritual of renewal. The outer form becomes a sacred space where transformation is enacted. The ritual of reflection. To become addicted to your appearance means to treat it as a ritual, not a performance. Every time you look in the mirror, you're engaging in psychological reflection. The question is, are you looking with judgment or awareness? If you judge, you reinforce the ego's tyranny, the endless comparison, the pursuit of perfection, the denial of aging and imperfection. But if you look with awareness, the mirror becomes a teacher. It tells you what you have been neglecting: your rest, your self-love, your vitality. In ancient myths, mirrors were portals. To look into one was to risk seeing not just your face, but your soul. Jung knew that the unconscious communicates in symbols, and the mirror is one of the most primal of them. Every culture has used it in ritualistic ways to call spirits to reflect truth, to expose deception. When you gaze at yourself long enough, something happens. The mask begins to dissolve. You start to see the person beneath the roles you play, the tired human being behind the professional smile, the wounded child beneath the adult armor. Jung would call this the confrontation with the unconscious. It's a terrifying yet liberating experience. You begin to realize that your appearance is not just the result of genetics or chance, but of your psychological story. Your posture, your tone, your eyes, all of it is language written by your experiences. The body as the voice of the soul. When words fail, the body speaks. It expresses what the mind represses. The body tightens when the psyche feels trapped. It relaxes when the heart is open. The more disconnected you are from your emotional truth, the more your body carries the weight of unspoken words. Jung saw this as a form of somatic symbolism, the body as the unconscious made visible. If you've ever noticed that you look different when you're at peace versus when you're anxious, that's not an illusion. Your muscles, your eyes, your breathing, all of them register your psychological state. Your face is a moving map of your inner weather. When you make peace with your reflection, your features soften. When you forgive yourself, the light returns to your eyes. When you suppress your truth, your jaw tightens. When you deny your sadness, your body stiffens. The face you show the world is not fixed. It's fluid, responsive to the soul's movement. To become addicted to your appearance, in Jung's terms, is to pay attention to these changes with sacred curiosity. It's not about obsessing over beauty. It's about decoding meaning. What is your body trying to tell you today? What truth is it reflecting back to you through tension, fatigue, or glow? The tragedy is that society teaches us to look at ourselves but never into ourselves. We learn to decorate, not to decode. But Jung would say that true transformation begins the moment you begin to see, to perceive the spiritual language hidden in the physical form. The psychology of self-perception. How you perceive yourself shapes how you move through life. If you see yourself as inadequate, you will carry that energy everywhere you go, and people will unconsciously reflect it back to you. The world becomes a mirror of your internal posture. Jung often emphasized projection, the unconscious tendency to see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. But projection works both ways. You also project onto your own body. For instance, someone who feels unworthy might unconsciously neglect their appearance. They might avoid eye contact, wear clothes that hide their shape, or stop grooming with care. These are not random habits, they are symbolic gestures of self-erasure. The psyche is saying, I do not wish to be seen. On the other hand, a person who becomes obsessed with perfecting their image may be using appearance to defend against inner emptiness. Their addiction to beauty is an unconscious attempt to fill the void left by self-rejection. Both are forms of psychological imbalance, two extremes of the same archetypal wound. To Jung, the solution is not to abandon the body or to worship it. It is to reconcile with it, to understand it as an instrument of expression, not a prison of flesh. The more you integrate your body into your sense of self, the more whole you become. You begin to inhabit yourself fully, rather than hovering above your life in self-judgment. Authenticity as aesthetic power. Have you ever met someone who wasn't conventionally beautiful but somehow captivated everyone? Their presence carried weight, their energy commanded attention. That's the magnetism of authenticity. Jung would say that such a person has integrated enough of their shadow and persona to express their true self. When you are authentic, your appearance becomes animated by soul. Beauty ceases to be about symmetry. It becomes about radiance. The eyes shine with awareness. The gestures flow with purpose. The voice resonates with truth. This is why Jung insisted that individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not just a psychological goal but an aesthetic one. The soul beautifies whatever it fully inhabits. To become addicted to your appearance, then, is to fall in love with this process of alignment, to enjoy witnessing how your body begins to reflect your inner evolution, to treat your mirror as a sacred companion recording the stages of your transformation. Self-observation without vanity. Vanity seeks approval, awareness seeks truth. The difference is subtle but crucial. When you are vain, you look in the mirror to confirm your worth through the eyes of others. When you are aware, you look to understand yourself. Jung warned that when the ego becomes inflated with external validation, the connection to the unconscious weakens. Vanity is the shadow form of self-awareness. It's self-obsession without self-understanding. But addiction to your appearance in the Jungian sense is a spiritual discipline. It's the practice of watching your reflection evolve as your consciousness deepens. Think of it this way. When you're angry, your face tells the truth before your words do. When you're in love, your entire demeanor glows. When you're hiding pain, your eyes lose focus. The mirror is constantly offering feedback about your psychic state. You just have to look with the right intention. To Jung, self-observation was a sacred act. It required honesty and courage. To see yourself as you truly are, not as you wish to appear, is to begin the process of transformation. The more aware you become of your physical presentation, the more you can understand your unconscious motivations. Your body becomes the Rosetta Stone of your inner world. The subtle art of self-respect. There is a spiritual difference between caring for your appearance and using it for validation. One is self-respect, the other is self-deception. Jung would remind us that the unconscious cannot be fooled. If you wear beautiful clothes but carry self-hatred within, your energy betrays you. People can feel the truth beneath the surface. When you truly respect yourself, your appearance becomes a celebration of your wholeness, not a compensation for your wounds. You take care of your body because you recognize it as the vessel of your individuality, the temple through which your spirit experiences the world. Self-respect expresses itself in small things: grooming, posture, movement, the tone in your voice. Each of these communicates psychological integrity. Jung would argue that neglecting these outer expressions is equivalent to neglecting your inner development. The psyche and the body mirror each other constantly. To become addicted to your appearance, therefore, is to cultivate reverence for your physical presence, not as an object of desire, but as a symbol of your ongoing individuation. It's the addiction to wholeness made visible. When the mirror becomes a teacher, imagine standing in front of a mirror and asking not "do I look good," but "who am I becoming?" This shift in perception changes everything. The mirror becomes a teacher, reflecting not just your face but your progress. You can see the days you've lived consciously, the glow of peace after forgiveness, the brightness of gratitude. You can also see the moments when you've betrayed yourself, the dullness after resentment, the tightness of suppressed emotion. To Jung, this was not poetic metaphor, it was literal. The psyche imprints itself onto the body. The face records emotional history the same way rings record the age of a tree. When you're addicted to your appearance in a Jungian sense, you read this record daily. You listen to your reflection with empathy, not critique. You begin to understand that your outer beauty is not static, it evolves with your inner work. The more truth you embody, the more luminous you become. The more lies you carry, the heavier your presence feels. Beauty becomes a byproduct of psychological alignment. Addiction as devotion. The word addiction often carries a negative connotation, something unhealthy, obsessive, compulsive. But Jung, who viewed human behavior through the lens of symbolism, would reinterpret it as devotion. Addiction reveals where your energy is fixated, where your unconscious seeks union. To be addicted to your appearance in this redefined sense means to be devoted to the ongoing revelation of your authentic self through the physical form. This kind of addiction purifies rather than corrupts. It drives you to maintain the integrity of your body as an act of honoring your psyche. It's not vanity, it's vigilance. You watch yourself because you care about the alignment between who you are inside and how you appear outside. Just as the alchemist monitored the transformation of lead into gold, the Jungian addict of appearance monitors the transformation of persona into authenticity. Every glance in the mirror becomes a test. Am I becoming more real? Am I living in truth? The psychology of aesthetic awareness beauty for Jung was never superficial. It was a sign of psychological balance. The Greek word kosmos, from which we get cosmetic, originally meant order. To make something beautiful was to bring it into harmony. When you cultivate your appearance consciously, you are restoring order between your outer and inner world. There is a moment in every person's journey when they realize that their appearance has been telling their story long before they could. The eyes that avoid contact speak of fear. The face that's overly composed speaks of control. The person who constantly changes their style might be searching for identity. Every aesthetic choice carries psychological meaning. So the next time you adjust your clothes style, your hair, or choose a color, ask yourself, what inner quality am I trying to express? What archetype is speaking through me today? The warrior, the lover, the sage, the healer. Jung believed that. These archetypes live within all of us, shaping how we present ourselves to the world. To become addicted to your appearance is to become conscious of this dialogue. It's to treat your outer form as a living canvas painted by your evolving psyche. The silent revolution of presence. There's a kind of beauty that has nothing to do with symmetry or perfection. It's the beauty of presence. Presence is the visible form of inner peace. It's the quiet power that comes from alignment between body, mind, and soul. When you cultivate presence, you don't need to announce your worth. People feel it. To Jung, presence is the aura of the integrated self. It's the moment when the unconscious and the conscious cooperate. Your movements slow down. Your energy stabilizes. Your eyes communicate authenticity. You stop trying to prove yourself and start embodying yourself. When you become addicted to your appearance, you're not chasing beauty, you're building presence. You're refining the physical container of your soul so it can express your truth more clearly. You realize that beauty is not something you acquire. It's something you radiate when you are psychologically whole. In this way, Jung's concept transforms a seemingly superficial idea, being addicted to your appearance, into a profound spiritual exercise. It's about learning to see yourself as both subject and symbol. Every glance in the mirror becomes a moment of integration. The addiction becomes devotion, the reflection becomes revelation, and the body becomes the living proof that your soul is awakening. Part 2. The persona, the mask. You wear to the world. Carl Jung taught that every human being carries a mask. He called it the persona, the face we show to the world. It is not fake, it is functional. It allows us to survive in society, to play our roles, to be recognized, to communicate. But the danger begins when we start to mistake the mask for the face, when the projection becomes the identity. Every morning when you choose your clothes, fix your hair, or adjust your posture, you are unconsciously sculpting your persona. It's the bridge between your inner world and the collective expectations of the outer world. Jung said the persona is a compromise between the individual and society. It's how your soul negotiates with culture. Without it, you would be invisible, but with too much of it, you disappear behind your own creation. There is something tragic yet necessary about this mask. You need it to function, but the more you depend on it, the more you risk losing the whisper of your true self. Society doesn't reward authenticity, it rewards performance. Jung understood this duality deeply. To live among people, you must have a mask. To live with yourself, you must not become it. The birth of the persona. The persona is born early in life. As children, we learn quickly what behaviors bring approval and which bring rejection. When you laughed too loudly and your parents frowned, a small fragment of your natural self learned to hide. When you were praised for being polite, quiet, obedient, you learn to wear that version of yourself like armor. Slowly, the authentic self retreats and the persona takes the stage. By the time adulthood arrives, most people are a collage of other people's expectations. They smile because it's polite, not because they feel joy. They speak because silence feels awkward, not because they have something real to say. They present strength when they are falling apart inside. Jung saw this not as hypocrisy but as adaptation, an attempt by the ego to survive the collective unconscious, that immense field of social norms pressing against individuality. But survival has a cost. The more we strengthen the persona, the more we suppress the shadow, the repressed, unaccepted aspects of our nature. The result is imbalance, a life that looks polished on the surface but feels hollow inside. The mask becomes too tight. The seduction of the mask. The persona is seductive. It gives you power, recognition, belonging. When people praise your intelligence, your kindness, your beauty, it's easy to confuse admiration for truth. You start to identify with the image others see. Jung described this as ego inflation through persona identification. It's the actor who forgets the play is over. The successful man who believes his suit and salary define him. The influencer who begins to believe in the filter. The teacher who lives for respect, not wisdom. Each has become intoxicated by their own mask. To be addicted to your appearance in the Jungian sense is also to confront this addiction, the addiction to persona. You might start your journey wanting to improve your physical image, but soon you realize you are improving not for yourself, but to maintain a role. The image becomes a prison, and you the prisoner. People say, "I lost myself." Jung would answer, "No, you didn't lose yourself. You hid behind your persona." The persona as a survival strategy. Jung never condemned the persona. He saw it as necessary. Without a mask, you cannot exist in society. But like oxygen, too much of it suffocates. The persona protects you from chaos. It's your social skin. It filters what the world can handle from you. You don't show your rage at work, your despair at dinner, your dreams in public. The persona keeps you civilized. But over time, this mask starts to think it is the whole face. It develops habits, opinions, smiles that no longer belong to you. You begin to perform yourself rather than live yourself. This is why so many people feel drained after social interaction. They are not tired of people, they are tired of performing. They have spent hours holding up the persona like a puppet, afraid that if it falls, others will see the unedited truth beneath. Jung understood this fatigue as a spiritual exhaustion, a symptom of disconnection from the self. When you no longer remember the difference between your true nature and your role, you become psychologically divided. The body may smile, but the soul stays silent. The mirror of society. Every culture has its masks. In some societies, humility is the persona. In others, confidence. In modern life, it's productivity, attractiveness, or positivity. Social media has magnified the persona into a global theater. We curate ourselves into fragments, always smiling, always composed, always improving. But beneath this performance lies anxiety. The more perfect your persona becomes, the more fragile your authenticity feels. Jung said, "The greater the persona, the greater the shadow. When the outer image glows too brightly, the darkness within deepens." That is why so many people who seem put together fall into silent depression. The mask is polished, but the soul behind it suffocates. To maintain the illusion, they must keep performing more work, more beauty, more validation. The persona demands constant feeding like an idol that never sleeps. To become addicted to your appearance is to risk worshipping your persona instead of using it as a tool. Jung's wisdom lies in the distinction: you must wear the mask consciously, but never become it. The discomfort of authenticity, removing the persona, is not a comfortable process. It feels like peeling off skin. The ego resists because the mask has kept it safe. When you start speaking your truth, people may reject you. When you stop pretending, the world stops clapping. But Jung believed that suffering is the beginning of individuation, the painful disintegration of the false self, so that the true one can emerge. You may notice this in your own life. The day you stop pretending to be agreeable, someone calls you selfish. The moment you express vulnerability, others feel threatened. The world rarely welcomes authenticity because it mirrors what others are repressing. That's why Jung said the individual who follows the path of individuation must often walk alone. Addiction to your appearance, if understood deeply, becomes a paradoxical journey. You begin by trying to perfect the mask, but through the process of awareness, you start to see its cracks. The more you stare into the mirror, the more you realize you're staring at a role. The addiction shifts from seeking beauty to seeking truth. When the persona becomes transparent, there's a moment in Jungian work when the persona doesn't vanish but becomes transparent. You still play your social roles, you work, you smile, you participate, but now your consciousness shines through the mask. The difference is awareness. You no longer believe your performance. You see yourself playing the role of the teacher, the friend, the lover, but you remain anchored in the self behind it. Jung compared this to acting in a dream while knowing you're dreaming. You participate fully, but you don't lose yourself in the illusion. The transparent persona is flexible. It adjusts to context, but never betrays essence. You can be kind without being fake, professional without being cold, beautiful without being vain. The energy of your soul animates the persona rather than being buried under it. This is the true artistry of appearance, not creating an image, but illuminating it from within. The shadow beneath the mask. Every persona casts a shadow. The more you emphasize one trait, the more its opposite is pushed into the dark. The helpful person represses selfishness. The confident person hides insecurity. The spiritual person denies anger. The more virtuous the mask, the more chaotic the shadow. Jung warned that when the shadow is ignored, it eventually erupts through depression, projection, or crisis. The persona cracks, and the unconscious floods in. This is why people who seem balanced sometimes have sudden breakdowns. Their mask could no longer contain the disowned parts of the psyche. To be addicted to your appearance consciously means to tend to your shadow as well. When you care for your outer form, you must also care for what it conceals. Beauty without self-awareness becomes repression. Elegance without honesty becomes artifice. The body radiates integrity only when it's aligned with truth. Every time you adjust your physical appearance, ask, what emotion am I hiding beneath this gesture? What am I trying to communicate or conceal? When the answer comes, listen gently. That's your unconscious trying to speak. The performance of control. The persona thrives on control. It's the part of you that fears chaos, the raw, unpredictable power of instinct. It polishes, organizes, filters. It says, don't show too much. Don't feel too deeply. Don't look messy. But life is inherently messy, and the self is wild. When you become too controlled, your energy becomes stagnant. You might appear calm, but inside there's tension. Jung likened this to a dam holding back a river. The persona constructs the dam. The unconscious builds pressure behind it. Eventually, something breaks through: illness, burnout, or emotional collapse. To live authentically, you must let the river flow. You must risk being misunderstood, judged, or rejected. The persona hates this because it thrives on approval, but your soul doesn't need approval, it needs expression. So the addiction must shift again from maintaining control to embodying freedom, from perfecting appearance to radiating aliveness. The social dream. Jung often compared modern life to a collective dream. Each person plays a symbolic role: the hero, the victim, the lover, the fool. Society rewards the actors who perform their roles convincingly, but deep inside many feel they're sleepwalking through someone else's story. To wake up is to recognize the dream, to say, this role is not me, this image is not my soul. The persona continues to function, you still go to work, still meet friends, but the dream loses its grip. You begin to see the play for what it is. This awakening changes even your appearance. The forced smile softens into a real one. The eyes once guarded begin to glow with awareness. The energy shifts from artificial confidence to quiet authority. People may not know why, but they feel it. Jung would call this the emanation of the self. When your outer form aligns with inner consciousness, your presence itself becomes transformative. The sacred role of the persona. The goal is not to destroy the persona, but to sanctify it. The mask becomes sacred when it serves the soul instead of hiding it. A healthy persona is like clothing for the psyche. It protects, expresses, and adapts. You can change it as life changes without losing your core. Jung compared it to a bridge between the individual and the collective. Without it, you cannot share your inner world. With it, you can transmit your essence into form. When you are addicted to your appearance in the right way, you refine your persona with reverence. You ask, how can my outer presence reflect my inner truth more clearly? Your clothes, gestures, and style become symbolic expressions of your journey. You stop wearing masks to please others. You start shaping them to honor your soul. This is what Jung meant by conscious individuation, turning even the persona into an instrument of the self, the mirror within. There comes a moment when the outer mirror and the inner mirror merge. You no longer look at your reflection to verify your worth. You look to witness your becoming. You begin to sense when your persona grows stiff, when it's time to shed an old role. You notice the subtle tension in your face when you're pretending. You feel the fatigue of falsehood in your body. And with awareness, you loosen the mask. You let the real face breathe again. Every psychological transformation leaves a physical trace. The body responds to truth. The eyes brighten. The breath deepens. The movements become fluid. The face opens. Jung saw this as evidence that the psyche and soma, mind and body, are one continuum. The moment you return to authenticity, your entire appearance changes. The addiction to appearance thus becomes a mirror meditation, an ongoing dialogue with your evolving identity. You learn to wear the mask lightly, consciously, like an artist aware of their brush. The freedom behind the mask. Ultimately, the persona is not the enemy, it's the threshold. It's the veil that reveals by concealing. You cannot live without it, but you must not live in it. When you realize this, you stop fearing performance. You can play any role because you know it's temporary. You can change your image without betraying your essence. You can be beautiful without being enslaved by beauty. You can appear confident without denying vulnerability. This is the paradox. Jung wanted us to understand. Liberation doesn't mean removing the mask. It means becoming transparent through it. Your appearance then becomes a living symbol of consciousness itself, visible, fluid, evolving. Every gesture, every glance, every smile becomes part of your individuation. You're no longer addicted to your appearance as egoic validation. You're addicted to the sacred art of embodying truth in form. Part 3. Shadow and self-image. Why you hate what you see in the mirror. There is a quiet moment each morning before the noise of the day begins when you face yourself in the mirror. The light is soft, the air still, and yet what you feel is not peace, it's hesitation. You pause not because you are unsure of how you look, but because something deeper trembles beneath the surface. Your reflection is not just your face, it is your confrontation with the parts of you you've tried to forget. Carl Jung called this encounter the shadow. It is the invisible side of your personality, the impulses, emotions, and truths that the conscious mind refuses to see. The mirror in this sense is not glass. It is a psychological threshold. Every time you look into it, you risk awakening what you've buried. The mirror as a portal. When Jung wrote about the shadow, he described it as the thing a person has no wish to be. The mirror then becomes the symbol of that resistance. It reflects both what you want to see and what you don't. You can admire your features, but you cannot escape the feeling that something within you remains unseen, unsaid, unresolved. People say, "I hate how I look," but the hatred is rarely about the surface. It's not the wrinkle, the weight, or the imperfection. It's the memory, the guilt, the weakness that those features silently recall. The eyes in the mirror are not the problem. It's what they remember that hurts. When you stare long enough, the reflection begins to breathe. It starts to look back at you as if asking, "What have you done with me?" You realize that the person in the glass has carried every lie you told to survive, every smile that hid pain, every silence that swallowed truth. Jung believed that the shadow is not an enemy but a messenger. It appears through discomfort, through the exact feelings we try to suppress. Hatred toward your reflection is one of its oldest languages. The unconscious speaks through emotion, not words. And so the feeling of disgust or shame that rises when you see yourself is not vanity, it is the soul calling for integration. The unseen weight. There is a specific heaviness in the act of looking at yourself when you're not at peace. The face becomes foreign, the eyes hollow. You think, "This can't be me," and in that sentence lies the whole tragedy of disconnection. Jung would say that the image in the mirror carries the projection of your unlived self. You see not what you are, but what you refuse to acknowledge. The more you reject these inner aspects, your anger, your selfishness, your fragility, the more violently they return through the mirror. It's a strange kind of haunting. The reflection is not evil, but it feels hostile because it holds everything you've abandoned. Every suppressed tear, every denied desire, every unspoken truth lives there waiting. To be addicted to your appearance in the Jungian sense means daring to look at that haunted reflection with compassion. It means refusing to turn away. Because the shadow does not vanish through denial, it dissolves only when seen. The fear of recognition. What you fear in the mirror is not ugliness, it is recognition. The moment when you suddenly realize that the person staring back knows too much. They know the parts you hide from others, but worse, they know the parts you hide from yourself. There is an ancient pain in that moment. You feel the split between who you are and who you pretend to be. The mirror becomes a witness to your fragmentation. Jung once wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." The mirror shows that density. You see it in the stiffness of your face when you lie to yourself, in the dullness of your eyes when you settle for less than you deserve, in the tension of your jaw when you repress your voice. And yet, even as you flinch from it, the shadow offers mercy. It does not judge. It only reflects. It waits patiently for you to stop pretending, to acknowledge that beneath all your masks you are still human, fragile, imperfect, longing. The body keeps the secrets, the mind denies. Every emotion you suppress finds a home in the body. The shadow doesn't live only in dreams. It breathes through muscles, posture, skin. The body becomes its canvas. When you look into the mirror, you're not just seeing your face, you're reading the silent diary of your psyche. The furrow between your brows might be years of unspoken worry. The curve of your shoulders might be decades of apology. The tiredness in your gaze could be the weight of carrying others' expectations. Jung taught that the unconscious speaks in symbols, and the body is its most intimate symbol. So when you hate how you look, you're not hating your body, you're hating what it reveals. The reflection exposes the tension between your lived truth and your performed truth. But hatred is not the end, it's the beginning. It means you're finally seeing what has always been there. The soul does not heal through denial. It heals through sight. The shadow's seduction. The shadow is not always dark in an obvious way. Sometimes it appears as self-pity, as the secret thrill of misery, as the subtle comfort of believing you're broken beyond repair. There's a strange addiction in self-rejection. It allows you to stay small, to avoid responsibility for your power. When you look into the mirror and think, "I am not enough," you are unknowingly feeding the shadow's hunger for domination. It wants you to believe in your incompleteness, because as long as you do, you'll never integrate it. You'll keep it alive as the enemy. Jung's insight was radical. The only way to disarm the shadow is to love it. not romantically but consciously to bring it into awareness. When you meet your reflection with softness instead of criticism, something shifts. The face that once felt foreign begins to relax. The hostility fades. The eyes start to glow again, not because they are more beautiful, but because they are seen. The shadow doesn't demand perfection, it demands honesty, the courage to stay. It takes enormous courage to stay in front of the mirror when everything in you wants to turn away, to keep looking when shame rises, when regret surfaces, when the voice of self-criticism grows loud. Jung called this confrontation the moral effort of self-knowledge. It's not intellectual, it's visceral. You will want to escape. You will tell yourself it's silly, vain, pointless. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you look deeper, you'll notice something sacred beneath the discomfort stillness. The mirror stops being an enemy and becomes a doorway. You realize that what you feared was never the image, it was the truth it carried. You were not afraid of seeing your face. You were afraid of seeing your soul unguarded. This is where the real addiction begins, not to vanity but to awareness. The kind of addiction that transforms shame into understanding and fear into presence. The face as a metaphor of the soul. The face is the most exposed part of the human being and yet the most misunderstood. We decorate it, judge it, compare it, but rarely listen to it. In Jungian psychology, the face represents the meeting point between the persona and the shadow, the social and the secret, the visible and the hidden. That's why looking at your own face can be so unsettling. You are watching those two worlds wrestle for dominance. There are days when your reflection looks alive and others when it looks like a mask. The difference is not sleep or makeup, it's congruence. When you live in alignment, your face breathes. When you live in contradiction, it hardens. The eyes are especially revealing. Jung called them the window of the unconscious. They reveal whether you are present or absent, open or closed, truthful or hiding. You cannot fake light in the eyes. You can smile with your mouth, but your eyes will always tell your soul's weather. The shadow's gift, the strange mercy of the shadow is that it never gives up on you. It will keep returning in your dreams, your moods, your mirrors until you finally see it. It will wear the face of your enemies, the voice of your critics, the fatigue of your own body. And when you finally say, "Yes, I see you," the energy that once oppressed you becomes strength. Jung called this process integration. The qualities you feared, anger, jealousy, pride, become sources of vitality when brought into consciousness. The hatred of your reflection begins to dissolve, not because the features change, but because the meaning changes. What once felt ugly now feels human. What once felt broken now feels real. Integration doesn't make you perfect, it makes you whole. The mirror, once a battlefield, becomes a sanctuary. You start to see beauty not as an aesthetic, but as a vibration of truth. The light behind the darkness. Jung often said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you finally face your own darkness, something luminous awakens behind it. The light that follows this encounter is different from the superficial glow of confidence. It's quieter, steadier, rooted in self-acceptance. You stop performing worthiness. You simply exist as it. When you look into the mirror after this transformation, your reflection feels familiar again. Not because it's flawless, but because it's honest. The eyes no longer accuse, they accompany. The face no longer hides, it reveals. You see not perfection, but presence. This is what it means to fall in love with your reflection, to love it as the home of your humanity. The silent reconciliation. There will come a day when you stand before the mirror and instead of judgment, you whisper gratitude. Gratitude for surviving your own denial, for carrying your soul through the years of pretending, for never giving up the silent fight to be real. In that moment, you'll understand that beauty is not in the symmetry of your face, but in the harmony between your shadow and yourself. You'll realize that every line, every scar, every tired gaze is evidence of a life lived honestly. The shadow will still visit you, it always will, but now it comes as a guide, not a ghost. You will meet its darkness with the same tenderness you offer your light. And as you walk away from the mirror, you'll feel it, that strange, sacred addiction to knowing yourself, to embracing both your brokenness and your brilliance, to seeing not what you wish to be, but what you are. That Jung would say is the beginning of wholeness. Part 4. Transformation through self-admiration. Transformation doesn't begin when others see your worth. It begins in the quiet moment when you dare to see it yourself, when you stop apologizing for existing and instead begin to marvel at the miracle of being who you are. But to Jung, this shift from self-rejection to self-admiration is not vanity, it's alchemy. It's the process of turning the raw material of shame into the gold of consciousness. The moment you stop waging war against your reflection, the psyche begins to rearrange itself toward wholeness. The transformation is invisible at first. It doesn't come with trumpets or revelation. It happens slowly, subtly, like dawn breaking through a dense forest. One day you simply realize that you no longer flinch when you see your face. You no longer speak to yourself with contempt. You begin to look with the same tenderness you would offer a child who has endured too much. That's when the shadow starts to soften. That's when the inner chemistry begins to change. The act of seeing without judgment. Self-admiration begins with a simple act to look without judgment. It sounds easy, but it's one of the most difficult things a human can do. When you look into the mirror, your mind rushes to evaluate the wrinkles, the fatigue, the perceived flaws. You categorize, compare, condemn. But beneath all that analysis lies something more profound, an opportunity to see, to really see. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you cannot become what you refuse to behold. The transformation starts not with change but with presence, the willingness to witness yourself without fleeing, without fixing, without turning away. In those silent moments of gaze, something ancient awakens. The psyche remembers itself. The ego, once so loud, begins to quiet. The persona relaxes. The shadow sighs. You begin to sense that the reflection staring back at you is not an image to critique, but a soul asking to be seen. The mirror as altar. The mirror can become a sacred place, not a stage for vanity, but an altar for remembrance. To stand before it consciously is to stand before your own temple. Every contour, every line, every mark carries the story of your survival. The mirror does not demand perfection, it demands truth. And when you meet it truthfully, the ritual becomes transformative. At first you might feel resistance. Your mind will whisper, "This is foolish, narcissistic, unnecessary." But that's only the persona guarding its territory. It fears what will happen if you begin to love what it once protected with shame. If you stay long enough, the mirror begins to shift. It stops being a piece of glass and becomes a gateway. You start to sense the presence of your deeper self, the quiet, timeless observer that has watched every version of you without judgment. The part that has seen you cry, sin, fail, rise, and never once turned away. That is the self Jung spoke of, the divine center within each person. And it is this self that awakens when you learn to admire yourself, not as a performance, but as an act of recognition. The body is sacred matter. To admire yourself is to honor the body as sacred matter, the vessel through which the spirit reveals its texture. Jung often compared psychological transformation to alchemy. The alchemist's task was to turn lead into gold, to refine the impure, not by destroying it, but by heating it until its hidden essence emerged. The same process occurs in the psyche. Your imperfections are not obstacles to beauty, they are the ingredients of it. When you begin to admire your own physical presence, not for its conformity to ideals, but for its truth, you are performing psychic alchemy. You are heating the darkness of self-rejection until it reveals its hidden light. The tired eyes that once embarrassed you now become sacred witnesses. The scars become hieroglyphs of endurance. The softness, the roughness, the asymmetry, all of it becomes evidence of a human being who has lived, felt, endured, transformed. Admiration then becomes reverence. You no longer decorate yourself to impress the world. You adorn yourself as a form of worship, not of ego, but of existence itself. The moment the soul recognizes itself, Transformation through self-admiration does not happen in a single revelation. It happens in fragments, small moments of recognition that accumulate into awakening. It might happen one morning when you're brushing your hair, and you suddenly feel compassion for the person in the mirror. You realize how much they've carried, how much they've lost, how fiercely they've tried to love despite fear. You feel the ache of your own tenderness, and for the first time you do not turn away. In that instant, the soul recognizes itself. The Jungian self, that deep archetype of wholeness, is not an abstract idea. It is a living consciousness that awakens every time you choose to see yourself without cruelty. It has waited patiently beneath years of criticism and neglect. The moment you look with love, it surfaces. You feel it not as pride, but as stillness. A quiet radiance expands in your chest as if something inside finally exhales. You are no longer just looking at your face. You are looking through it into the eternity behind it. From shame to reverence. Every act of self-hatred leaves a residue in the soul, a heaviness that dims your energy, a dullness in the eyes, a fatigue that no sleep can cure, but admiration cleanses that residue. It doesn't deny your flaws, it changes your relationship with them. Jung believed that what we resist persists. The more you fight against your image, the more power it has over you. But when you meet it with acceptance, its grip loosens. Shame begins to melt into reverence. This is not the same as self-indulgence. Reverence is different from arrogance. Arrogance inflates the ego, reverence dissolves it. In reverence, you bow before the miracle of your own becoming. You realize that the face you wear today is the result of thousands of unseen choices, moments, and survivals. You are not beautiful because you fit a standard. You are beautiful because you exist as the visible expression of a soul still evolving. That realization humbles you. It fills you with gratitude, not superiority. You begin to walk differently, not with pride, but with presence. The return of the inner child. When you admire yourself with sincerity, something ancient stirs inside you, the child you once were. That child knew admiration instinctively. They would stare at their reflection in wonder, not judgment. They didn't think, "Am I beautiful?" They thought, "That's me." It was pure recognition, untainted by comparison. Over time, the world taught you to replace wonder with scrutiny. To measure yourself against others, to hide what made you different, to earn approval, instead of living in curiosity. The child retreated into the unconscious, exiled, unheard. But the act of self-admiration calls that child home. Every time you look at yourself with kindness, you're saying to that lost part, "It's safe now, you can come out." And when it returns, you feel its joy rising through your body, a kind of innocent awe that no longer depends on youth or perfection. Jung would say that this reunion is part of individuation, the integration of what was split off. The adult brings consciousness, the child brings vitality. Together they form wholeness. The silence that heals transformation through self-admiration happens in silence, not in declarations or affirmations, but in stillness. There's a moment when the noise of your mind fades, and what remains is simply presence, your breathing, your gaze, your being. That silence is not emptiness, it's the sound of integration. The psyche is no longer at war with itself. You may not notice anything dramatic, but the shift is profound. The mirror feels softer. The air around you feels thicker, alive. You begin to sense a quiet pulse moving through your body, as if your cells themselves are beginning to trust you again. Self-admiration at its core is reconciliation. It is the body forgiving the mind for years of neglect. It is the heart forgiving the ego for its harshness. It is the soul forgiving the human for forgetting its divinity. That forgiveness doesn't come from effort. It comes from surrender, from letting yourself be seen fully without resistance. The alchemy of light and shadow. In Jung's view, transformation is never about escaping darkness, but about illuminating it. Self-admiration is not the denial of the shadow, it is the embrace that redeems it. When you look into your eyes and see both your strength and your weakness, your beauty and your brokenness, your light and your shadow, and you still whisper, I love you, the psyche reorganizes itself. The opposites that once tore you apart begin to harmonize. It's not about balance, it's about union. The light no longer fights the dark, it shines through it. The dark no longer hides, it carries the light. This is what Jung called the coniunctio oppositorum, the sacred union of opposites, the essence of individuation. In this union, self-admiration becomes an act of divine participation. You're not worshipping the ego. You're witnessing the dance of the self through the human form. The outer reflection of inner peace people will notice it, though they may not understand it. They'll say, "You look different," even if nothing external has changed. What they're sensing is coherence, the alignment between your outer appearance and your inner state. Your face carries a calm radiance. Your body moves with gentleness. Your voice slows down. There's no performance left. You're not trying to be liked, nor are you hiding. You have become transparent, your body, mind and soul moving as one current. This is the aesthetic of wholeness that Jung spoke of. When the soul is at peace, beauty is inevitable. Not the beauty of youth or fashion, but the beauty of truth. It's the light that doesn't depend on makeup or mirrors, it emanates from within. The addiction to your appearance evolves once more. It's no longer about maintaining an image, but about maintaining presence. You become addicted to coherence, to the feeling of being whole. The quiet power of self-witnessing. There is a stage beyond admiration, the stage of witnessing. To witness yourself is to stand in awe without need or expectation, simply aware of the mystery of your own being. You realize that you are not the reflection, nor the thoughts about it, nor the emotions it stirs. You are the one who watches the silent consciousness behind it all. Jung would say that this awareness is the self, observing its own incarnation. In this state, beauty ceases to be a goal. It becomes a side effect of truth. The lines on your face, the fatigue in your eyes, the color of your skin, all become expressions of your story. You stop wishing to look different because you understand that what you see is the testimony of your evolution. To witness yourself is to step outside time. You no longer see past or future versions of yourself, only this living moment, radiant and whole. The rebirth of admiration. Eventually, admiration becomes natural again, like breathing. You don't force it, it flows. You catch glimpses of your reflection and smile, not out of pride, but out of quiet recognition. I know you. I remember you. The shadow still visits, the doubts still whisper, but they no longer dominate the mirror. You've learned to let them pass like clouds while your gaze stays steady on the horizon of your own becoming. This is transformation through self-admiration, not the achievement of perfection, but the recovery of love. Love not as emotion, but as perception, the ability to see without distortion. And in that perception, you discover that you were never unworthy, never broken, never less than divine. You were simply learning how to see yourself clearly. Part 5. The alchemy of the body, physical appearance as a spiritual practice. The human body is the oldest temple of the spirit. Long before religion built its cathedrals, the soul had already carved its sanctuary in flesh and bone. Jung believed that the body is not a mere vessel, but a field of symbols, an alchemical laboratory where the invisible transforms into the visible and the divine seeks expression through matter. When you look at yourself, you are not just seeing a physical organism, you are witnessing the slow evolution of the psyche in form. Every contour is the trace of an inner story. Every movement is a language the unconscious speaks through you. To live in awareness of your body is to live in communion with the mystery of being incarnated. The body is alchemical matter. In alchemy, matter was never dead, it was sacred. The alchemist did not seek gold for wealth, but for revelation. To purify metal was to purify the soul. Jung saw in this ancient art a metaphor for psychological transformation. He wrote that the alchemist's furnace symbolized the human psyche, where opposing elements, light and dark, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter, are fused into a single living wholeness. Your body is that furnace. It holds the heat of your desires, the residue of your sorrows, the essence of your vitality. The way you treat it, the way you inhabit it, is not superficial, it's spiritual. Every gesture, every breath, every gaze carries the energy of your inner chemistry. When you deny your body, you fragment your soul. When you honor it, you begin the alchemy of integration, the forgotten dialogue. Most people live divorced from their bodies. They treat the body as an object, something to manipulate or escape. They push it when it's tired, numb it when it hurts, decorate it to please others. In this disconnection, the sacred dialogue between psyche and soma is lost. But the body never stops speaking. It whispers through tension, fatigue, hunger, illness, desire. These are not inconveniences, they are messages. Each symptom, each sensation, each craving carries a symbolic truth. Jung called this the language of the unconscious made flesh. To listen to your body is to listen to your soul. When you feel anxiety tight in your chest, it's not just biology, it's the soul reminding you of unspoken fear. When your back aches, perhaps it's the weight of a responsibility you no longer wish to bear. When your posture collapses, maybe your spirit is bending under unseen grief. In this way, the body becomes a text to read, not a problem to fix. The sacred labor of presence alchemy required patience. The alchemist had to watch the fire constantly, neither too hot nor too cold. If he grew careless, the entire experiment could fail. Jung believed that this same patience is needed in the inner work of transformation. The psyche, like metal, resists sudden change. It must be tended with care. Your body teaches you this patience. It moves at the rhythm of nature, not at the speed of thought. You can't rush healing. You can't demand vitality from exhaustion. The body transforms in cycles, just like the moon, just like the seasons. To live in your body consciously is to accept this rhythm, to eat slowly, to breathe deeply, to move not to perform but to inhabit, to look at your reflection and say, I am still becoming. That statement is not resignation, it's reverence. It's the recognition that your body is not finished because your soul is not finished. The body's memory. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Every emotion you've ever suppressed lives somewhere in your flesh. The throat carries the words never spoken. The stomach holds the fears never digested. The chest stores the griefs never wept. The pelvis carries the shame never confessed. When Jung studied psychosomatic symptoms, he saw them as symbolic eruptions of the unconscious, a cry for integration. The body speaks the truth that the mouth denies. That's why healing often begins when you stop analyzing and start listening. To make peace with your body, you must let it speak. You must feel its trembling, its fatigue, its hunger for tenderness. You must allow the emotions trapped in muscle and bone to rise, even if they come as tears, sighs, or silence. This is not weakness, it's purification. The alchemists called this stage nigredo, the blackening. It is the moment when all impurities come to the surface, when the old self dissolves into chaos so that a new form can emerge. The body too undergoes this blackening. It breaks fatigue's rebels only to renew itself. If you listen deeply, you'll notice that your body is not punishing you, it's revealing where your soul has been abandoned. The mirror of flesh. In the mirror, your body becomes your teacher. Every detail, your hands, your scars, your wrinkles, contains instruction. Jung would say the way you see your body reveals the way you see your soul. If you approach it with judgment, you will see flaws. If you approach it with reverence, you will see form. To admire your physical presence is to acknowledge that spirit has chosen this particular shape through which to express itself. You are not randomly assembled. The color of your skin, the shape of your eyes, the rhythm of your voice, they are all archetypal signatures. In myth, the gods did not despise form, they inhabited it. They came as flame, animal, wind, body. The divine always needs form to make itself known. You too are one of its forms. When you understand this, self-care stops being vanity and becomes devotion. Bathing becomes baptism. Dressing becomes ritual. Resting becomes prayer. The discipline of embodiment. To live spiritually is not to float above the body, it is to descend fully into it. Many seekers try to escape matter in search of purity. They meditate to transcend, to rise, to detach. But Jung warned that the path to the self does not bypass the physical, it descends through it. The soul does not seek to leave the world, it seeks to incarnate within it completely. This means that tending to your body, feeding it well, letting it move, letting it rest, is not a distraction from the spiritual path. It is the spiritual path. When you breathe consciously, when you feel the ground beneath your feet, when you move with awareness, you are practicing what Jung called active participation in life. You are allowing spirit to inhabit matter fully. Every breath becomes alchemy, the invisible transforming into the tangible. The fire within. In the alchemical texts, Jung studied the fire was the agent of transformation. Too little fire and the material remained raw, too much and it burned. The alchemist had to learn the art of maintaining the perfect flame. Your inner fire is your awareness. When you direct it toward your body with balance, neither obsession nor neglect, you begin the sacred work of refinement. You may notice that your energy changes when you care for yourself with consciousness. The body becomes lighter, the senses sharper, the breath deeper. These are not merely physical improvements, they are psychic ones. Awareness burns away unconscious habits. Presence refines instinct into intuition. If you push the fire through control, perfectionism, or self-hatred, the body resists. If you ignore it through laziness or denial, the body dulls. The alchemy fails in both extremes. The art is in devotion without domination, in care without obsession. This is the balance Jung called conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites. The language of posture. Every posture is a prayer. The way you sit, stand, move, and hold yourself reveals your inner theology. A bowed head can mean humility or defeat. An upright spine can mean pride or self-respect. Jung believed that the psyche speaks through images, and the body is the most immediate image of all. If you want to know what you truly believe about yourself, observe how you inhabit your body. Do you shrink from space or claim it? Do you walk as though apologizing for being here, or as though honoring your right to exist? The body doesn't lie, it displays what the mouth conceals. To transform your inner world, begin with movement. Stand slowly, breathe deeply, lift your head as if remembering that you belong to heaven and earth at once. This is not performance, it's invocation. It's the body remembering its sacred geometry. Each conscious gesture becomes a small act of individuation, the moment when soul and flesh move as one. The beauty of imperfection. In alchemy, perfection is not purity, it is wholeness. A flawed metal that has been through the fire shines not despite its scars, but because of them. Jung saw the same principle in the human soul. Your body's imperfections are not mistakes, they are the marks of participation in life. The scar is the memory of healing. The wrinkle is the trace of laughter or sorrow. The softness, the unevenness, the fatigue, each tells a story of being human. When you begin to see beauty in imperfection, you free yourself from tyranny, the tyranny of ideal, the tyranny of comparison. You understand that beauty is not symmetry, it's authenticity. This insight transforms not only your perception of yourself, but your relationship to others. You stop judging their appearances because you have learned to honor your own. You recognize the divine experiment in every form. To love your imperfect body is to proclaim the divine lives even here. The body's role in individuation. Individuation in Jung's psychology is the process by which a person becomes whole, integrating conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. The body plays a crucial role in this journey. Without embodiment, individuation remains theoretical. You can read, meditate, reflect, but if your body remains disconnected, the transformation stays in the mind. The true test of individuation is presence, how you move through the world. The individuated person does not merely know they embody. They walk with gravity and grace, their movements neither hurried nor hesitant. They inhabit their space fully but humbly. Their appearance radiates coherence. This doesn't mean eternal health or youth, it means transparency. The soul shines through the form. People sense it not as beauty but as depth, as peace. The body becomes the living symbol of psychic integration. The ritual of care. Care for the body when done consciously becomes a ritual of alignment. When you wash your face, imagine cleansing not just skin but history. When you eat, imagine feeding not just hunger but vitality. When you rest, imagine returning to the womb of stillness where the psyche renews itself. These gestures repeated daily become what Jung might call small acts of individuation, micro-alchemical moments in which spirit and matter converse. Through care, you remind the unconscious that it is seen. Through touch, you remind the body that it is loved. Through rest, you remind the ego that it is not in control. In this way, physical care becomes spiritual practice not to perfect but to participate, not to escape but to embody. The silence of union. There comes a moment when the division between spirit and body dissolves. You no longer think of one as higher and the other as lower. They become one motion, one awareness, one breath. In that silence, every cell feels sacred. You sense the pulse of life not as biology but as liturgy. You realize that to move your hand is to move creation itself. To breathe is to participate in eternity. This is the rubedo of alchemy, the reddening the stage of completion. The soul has fused with matter. The divine lives fully in the human. You stand before the mirror and no longer see an image to improve. You see a presence to honor. The addiction to appearance becomes devotion to embodiment. You bow not to vanity, but to life itself unfolding through the mystery of your form. Part 6. Individuation. When outer beauty mirrors inner wholeness. In the deepest layer of Jung psychology, there is a truth so simple that the intellect often overlooks it. Beauty is the visible form of inner harmony. When the opposites within you, your light and your darkness, your reason and your passion, your masculine and feminine energies, cease their war and begin to listen to one another, something miraculous happens. The soul's balance begins to speak through the body. You see it not in the features of the face but in the aura of presence. The outer form becomes transparent to the inner truth. The body no longer hides the psyche, it expresses it. This is the mystery of individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole where outer beauty arises naturally from inner alignment. The return to the center individuation is not about self-improvement, it is about self-return. It is not becoming someone else, it is the long journey home to what you have always been. Jung described it as the process by which a person becomes in the fullest sense themselves. Imagine a wheel. At the center is the self-silent, radiant, immovable. Around it spins the ego chasing desires, fears, identities. The further the ego drifts from the center, the more fragmented life feels. But as it begins to turn inward toward the center, everything starts to realign. You feel it in the body first, a stillness beneath movement, a softness beneath strength. The nervous energy that once drove you begins to settle into rhythm. You breathe differently. Your gestures simplify. The noise of self-consciousness fades. What remains is presence. Presence is the outer reflection of inner wholeness. It cannot be manufactured. It emanates from integration. The body becomes a vessel of calm fire, alive yet rooted, human yet luminous. The silence of integration. When Jung wrote about individuation, he spoke not of grand enlightenment, but of quiet reconciliation. It is not a lightning strike, it is a slow melting. The contradictions within you do not vanish. They learn to coexist. The fire and the water, the wild and the wise begin to move as one current. This inner merging has a physical resonance. You start to notice that your face, your voice, even your gaze begin to change subtly. The harsh lines soften. The eyes grow clear. The movements lose their restlessness. This is not cosmetic transformation, it is energetic alchemy. Individuation changes the way your energy and habits form. The mask once rigid becomes translucent. The shadow once feared becomes depth. The persona once performative becomes expression. The self once hidden becomes visible through all of them. This is why Jung said that the individuated person radiates an indefinable something. That radiance is not charisma, it's coherence. When the inner world stops fragmenting, the outer world stops resisting. The beauty of stillness. Outer beauty in its truest sense is the silence of conflict. It's what happens when your body no longer carries the tension of denial. You don't have to posture or perform. You simply are. The individuated face is not perfect, it is alive. Its beauty lies not in symmetry but in serenity. The eyes no longer seek approval, they witness. The mouth no longer hides truth, it rests in quiet honesty. The skin no longer carries shame, it reflects peace. You can feel it even without words. When such a person enters, a room time slows. People sense them not through looks but through presence. Their beauty is not seen, it is felt. This kind of beauty does not age, it matures. It deepens with time because it draws its vitality not from the surface but from the soul. The individuated person ages like a landscape, not an object. Their body becomes an icon of their journey, every line, every scar, every motion part of a living scripture of wholeness. The soul made visible. Jung believed that individuation makes the invisible visible. It's the process by which the self, the divine archetype of wholeness, incarnates more fully into the human form. You don't become flawless, you become transparent. The light of consciousness shines through you, and the outer world sees not your perfection but your presence. Even your imperfections become luminous, because they are no longer separate from meaning. You can see this in nature. A tree is beautiful not because it is symmetrical, but because it is whole. Its branches twist, its bark scars, its roots spread unevenly, yet everything belongs. Nothing is rejected, nothing is wasted. Human beauty follows the same law. It is not the absence of flaw, but the presence of harmony. When you no longer divide yourself into good and bad, acceptable and shameful, your appearance becomes unified. The body relaxes, the soul breathes. Beauty becomes the byproduct of belonging to yourself. The reconciliation of shadow. The shadow, once the source of self-hatred, becomes the foundation of grace. When you bring the shadow into awareness, when you acknowledge the envy, the fear, the rage, the selfishness, something paradoxical occurs. Instead of corrupting your light, it gives it depth. The light shines warmer through darkness. In physical terms, you might notice that your expression softens. The rigidity born of repression dissolves. The body no longer defends against itself. You stop pretending to be pure, and in doing so you become genuine. Individuation is not the victory of light over dark, it is the marriage of the two. Jung called this the conjunctio oppositorum, the sacred conjunction of opposites. In this alchemical union, the face becomes the meeting ground of heaven and earth. You become both human and divine, and your beauty is the echo of that union. The mystery of inner gravity. There is a quiet gravity that surrounds those who have integrated themselves. It's not authority or power, it's presence. Jung described it as the magnetism of authenticity. When you no longer hide from yourself, you stop scattering your energy. Every fragment that was once projected outward returns to the center. You feel fuller, denser, more anchored. Others feel it too, not as intimidation but as stability. This gravity manifests in appearance. Your gestures slow down. Your eyes meet others without need. Your smile feels unforced. Even your silence communicates. You've become an embodied field, a human being whose physical presence carries the weight of the unseen. That is what it means for outer beauty to mirror inner wholeness. It is the beauty of integration, not decoration but density, not image but energy. The humility of wholeness. The individuated person does not flaunt their beauty. They forget it. There is a humility that arises when you realize you are not manufacturing yourself, you are being shaped by something greater. You understand that the light in your eyes is not your possession, but your participation in the divine. In this humility, vanity dissolves. You no longer seek to be admired because admiration feels too small. You seek only to embody truth. And yet, paradoxically, people are drawn to you, not because of appearance, but because of resonance. They feel safe, seen, inspired in your presence. This is not charisma, it's contagion. Wholeness is contagious. The body, once a battlefield of self-image, becomes a vessel of peace. Every breath becomes prayer. Every movement becomes meditation. Beauty becomes the natural fragrance of balance. The dissolution of the mask. When individuation reaches its maturity, the persona becomes translucent. You still wear it, but lightly like silk instead of armor. You can play your roles in the world: teacher, friend, lover, parent, without losing yourself in them. The difference is awareness. You act without identification. You express without attachment. This lightness reflects outwardly. Your face no longer hardens into fixed expressions. Your style, your voice, your posture, they flow naturally from the moment. You are no longer performing life, you are participating in it. People sense the real you even through your roles. Because the roles no longer obscure, they reveal. The divine light behind them shines through. This is the mirror of wholeness, the outer mask serving the inner truth. The self-image becomes sacred again, not as vanity, but as vessel. The serenity of acceptance. At the heart of individuation lies acceptance, not the passive kind, but the profound recognition that nothing in you is accidental. Every emotion, every failure, every longing has served your becoming. When you reach this acceptance, your relationship with your appearance changes completely. You no longer see your body as an obstacle to transcendence, but as the very medium of it. The curve of your form, the texture of your skin, the rhythm of your heartbeat, all of it becomes holy ground. You stop asking, "Do I look good?" and start asking, "Am I aligned?" This is not resignation, it is peace. Peace that radiates outward. The face of acceptance is the most beautiful face in the world because it carries no tension, no pretense. It's a face that says, "I am what I am," and in that simplicity the divine finds its mirror. The body as the face of the soul. At the end of Jung's lifelong study, he arrived at a mystical insight. The soul is embodied, and the body is ensouled. There is no real separation. When you have integrated your psyche, your outer form becomes a manifestation of your inner pattern, what Jung called the imago Dei, the image of God within. The more you become yourself, the more divine you appear, not because of perfection, but because of presence. Your eyes reflect compassion. Your posture communicates trust. Your movements express harmony. The outer self becomes the signature of the inner order. This is why the truly individuated person often looks serene even in hardship. Their beauty does not depend on circumstance. It is the light of awareness filtering through flesh. To see such a person is to feel remembered, as if the universe is reminding you of your own forgotten wholeness. The sacred simplicity. When outer beauty mirrors inner wholeness, life itself becomes simpler. You no longer chase validation through appearance. You no longer compare or compete. You adorn yourself not to impress, but to honor. Your choices of clothing, of movement, of expression arise from stillness, not anxiety. Even your reflection becomes a companion, not an adversary. You meet it each morning not to critique, but to align, to ask silently, "Are you still here with me?" And the answer comes not in words, but in feeling a quiet yes. This simplicity is the crown of individuation. It is the moment when your life, your body, and your soul breathe together in one rhythm. The outer world sees beauty, the inner world feels home. The light that does not shout. At the end of the alchemical process, the gold produced is silent. It does not boast of its brightness, it simply reflects light faithfully. So too, with the individuated person, their beauty is quiet, steady, self-evident. They walk through the world without trying to shine, yet everything around them seems to glow. Their presence heals not because they preach, but because they are. This is the culmination of the addiction to appearance, when appearance becomes the expression of essence, when form becomes faithful to spirit. When the human face becomes a reflection of eternity itself, and in that moment, the moment of inner wholeness mirrored in outer beauty, the long journey ends not in perfection but in peace. The circle closes. The alchemy is complete. The self looks through the eyes, and for the first time the mirror smiles back. When you finally stop trying to perfect your reflection and start listening to what it's been saying all along, you discover that the face in the mirror was never your enemy. It was your soul waiting for you to come home. Jung called it individuation, the moment when your outer beauty begins to mirror your inner wholeness. That's not narcissism, that's awakening.